You have yet to do what you came here to do. And I know who I'm talking to, and I know who's in the room, and I know all the amazing stuff that you've done. And you personally, I want you to take it personally, you have yet to do what you came here to do. And you can. It was March 23rd, 2002, at about 2 a.m. in the morning, and I was sitting in the little yellow meditation chair in the corner of my bedroom, watching my son, my 8-year-old son, sleeping in my bed. Who has kids? Cute, aren't they, when they're sleeping? I wasn't sleeping as well. He was in my bed because my parents were in from out of town, and they had come to support me both spiritually, emotionally, and definitely financially as I was nearing the end of a $500,000 custody suit. My intention was to keep my 50% custody of my son. And after 2 years, 4 lawyers, and over 10 days in court, I was about as emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and financially bankrupt as I could imagine myself to be. And I thought, wow, that first half of my life hasn't had much to show for it. I had this big looming midlife loser, over my head. But I'm not different than most, Up to 25% of Americans experience what we call midlife crisis. And you mix up the players and you mix up the stories, and you get the same depression. You get the same lack of direction. You get the same unfulfilled potential. And it happens to men and women. And whether it be financial shifts or relationship shifts, which a lot of you in the room have spoken about over the last week, whether it's health shifts, career work shifts, or even life and death shifts. We have to admit it, midlife shift happens, right? Yes? And for me in that moment, when I was just very, very clear that my whole life had been a waste, I was actually blessed, and that's what I call it. I was blessed with an idea that went really contrary to what society, generally accepted societal wisdom, and even really counter to my upbringing, my cultural upbringing. And the idea went like this: what if the first half of life was just R&D? What if it was just research and development? And what if I had done everything up to that point exactly as I was supposed to? And what if it had all been lab experiments? What if it was all lab experiments, each giving their own formula? That's what you do in a lab. Each giving their own clues as to what I was really here for. And depending on how I assimilated those clues, that's where I found what I'm here to do and where that second half would come from. And what if it's all about the second half? What if it's all about the second half? Society doesn't say that. I love chocolate chip cookies. Anybody else in the room? Yes. And for me, it's all about the chip, baby. I'm in it for the chip, right? And so that cookie is just an enabling mechanism. It's a carrier for what really matters, the chip. And so what if life was that way? What if the first half was just an enabling mechanism? What if it was just a carrier to what really matters, that second half? And so, in that moment, that's how the Back 40, the concept of the Back 40, life's radical second half, came about. And as the writing ensued over the next few years, what got downloaded for me, was 7 elements that if I were to embrace those in my life, then I would find that direction towards that purposeful second half. The first embrace was my past. I had spent 30 years doing every personal development, human development, spiritual development program under the planet. Not under the planet, on the planet. Some under the planet. And, I had learned to find closure. I had learned to get complete with things. I had learned to even forgive, people and situations and events from my past. But what I saw is that if I actually took responsibility, like what if I actually had set up all those laboratory environments? What if I had picked and enrolled all the lab assistants? And what if I had done all these lab experiments? Like if I took that kind of perspective, I had whole new clues coming out of that. And plus, I was no longer the victim. So I didn't have to worry about closure, completion, forgiveness, because I had set the whole damn thing up for my benefit. I could only be thankful and blessed out of it. So the first was embracing my past. Next was embracing my present. Because if I was operating as if there were forces or fate happening outside of me that had me where I am, again, I didn't have power. A very wise man once said to me, there's two ways you can operate in life, Darrell. You can either see yourself at cause or you can see yourself at effect. He said, neither one is true. It's all made up. But when you see your life through one of them, you have power and you have some say over the way life's going to go. And through the other one, you don't. So choose. And what I saw is that if I could really choose to be responsible, like fully designing it all of my past and present, that allowed me to then have the power to choose my future. And then embrace number 3 was gifts and talents. 40 years of education, career coach, licensed spiritual counselor. I had tons of gifts and talents. Some of them learned formally, some of them learned through life. Like I was an expert now on the family law system, right? I hadn't asked for that, but it was something I picked up. So I thought an inventory of sorts of my gifts and talents at this point in life would be valuable. Also my values. You know, at 20, 30, I had very different values than now I did as a 40-year-old single dad. And then embrace number 5, my initiation. Many of y'all have talked about crisis. And society likes to talk about midlife crisis. And I thought, well, what if it's really a midlife opportunity? And what if it's just my initiation into this party of my second half? All depending on how I looked at it. Embrace number 6 was my purpose. And what I noticed is that whenever I did look at these lab experiments, and I had had a very short-term, life-focused way of living before. But whenever I could see these clues and these formulas that I'd set up in my lab experiments, it gave me a more longer-term perspective of a purposeful life. And then the last embrace was a presence. Now, I had been a spiritual counselor. I had done all this self-development guru stuff. But even I saw if I could allow a presence to work through me, as opposed to doing it all myself, there was something entirely new possible. So what I saw for myself, and I invite y'all to see for yourself, is that society may say that your best creativity, your best ingenuity, your best relationships, your best career, your best hot sex, which some people in the room have said they wouldn't mind having more of, that maybe that's not behind us. Maybe like Frank Sinatra sings, the best is yet to come. And won't it be fine? And as I close, I want to give you just a sense of if people didn't live like something was possible, if a second half purpose, radically distinct from a first half of R&D wasn't possible, these people would have never accomplished what they did. A 48-year-old thick-accented, bullied in school Asperger's sufferer from a remote Scottish village would have never entered Britain's Got Talent. Who am I? A 48-year-old thick-accented, bullied in school Asperger's sufferer from a remote Scottish village would have never entered Britain's Got Talent. Susan Boyle. A 66-year-old former teacher and poultry editor for the St. Louis Star would have never published a book in 1932 that went on to become a major TV series for 8 years, Little House on the Prairie. Last one, 76-year-old lifetime farm worker, crippled by arthritis to the point that she could no longer embroider, with no artistic and little formal education, would have never picked up a paintbrush and produced 1,000 paintings in 25 years. Grandma Moses. So what I invite y'all to do is join me in shifting the cultural conversation from midlife crisis to the Back 40, life's radical second half. Thank you.
Oh, there's a feeling inside of me. It's power that says